Well, hello, educator friends, and I hope you are having a great day wherever you might be, whatever you might be doing, whatever season of the school year you are in. I hope it's a great one. And so, if you are tuning in to the School Life series for the very first time, you need to know that this is an educational platform just for you. It's a place where we talk about some of the hottest topics in education, but we also have great guests on, just like we do today, who share their stories, share their passions, and most of all, share really good advice for you so you can get better, so you can be the best educator that you can be. So this is not for just for principals or leaders. This is not just for teachers. This is for all educators. And so today we have a really special guest on here. I actually have known Brittany for some time now. Recently got to visit her school down in West Virginia a few weeks ago, and her school is going to be our next School Life Spotlight school. And so it was just very fitting that we brought all this together and had her on as a guest on the School Life series. So today's guest, all the way from the hills of West Virginia, we have Dr. Porter. Brittany, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Today, we're going to dive into middle school education, middle level learning and teaching. And then Brittany has also created an incredible, I was just blown away, CTE program for her middle school students at her school. So she's going to talk more about that and what you can do, because I know as an elementary principal, I thought CTE was something complex and crazy that only was for high schools and elite high schools at that. And it doesn't have to be, and she's doing it really well with young students. And so, Brittany, let's start with what we always start with here on the School Life series, and that's just telling our listeners and our viewers about you. So, who are you?
Okay, so well, that should be an easy question. It actually was like the first one that I was stumped on. I would say, you know, Brittany Porter from West Virginia, but more than that, I'm from like the smallest. It's not a town. It's not a city. We don't have a restaurant. We don't have a red light. Like it's a bunch of hollers, and
Yeah.
I grew up 7 miles up a holler that is typically known as like the worst in my, I guess, jurisdiction for my school,
Hmm.
which goes on to say that I ended up becoming principal at the school that I graduated from.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, so it was a high school then, and then when we consolidated, now it's the middle school. But I'm a mom, most, that's first and foremost. I have 4 kids, twin boys, they'll be 20. They're in their second year of college. And then I have a 13-year-old son. He's in eighth grade at the school that I'm the principal at. And then a 10-year-old daughter that's in fourth grade.
Yeah. And I know when we talked a couple of weeks ago at your school, I just flat out asked you, how do you do it all? Because you're coaching, you're principaling really well, you're momming. I mean, all of this stuff. It's just like, wow, I would hate to see your Google Calendar because it's full.
It is. And what's worse is it's probably color coded because I'm very A type.
Yeah, well, it would have to be to keep not just you organized, but your entire family organized. And so, thanks for sharing a little bit about that. What would you say? What are some of your passions outside of education?
Well, I'm most passionate about my kids. Anything that they enjoy, anything that they're good at, anything that they like, they want to talk about. And, outside of education in general, I'm passionate about my kids at my building. That really is a bit the biggest passion that I have is just teaching them that you can be more than what they think they can be or what they've been told they can be just because of
Yes.
where they're from or where they're not from or have nots, that kind of thing. I really enjoy sports. That probably goes right back into the same philosophy of proving people wrong or taking a child that is not very good at that sport, but that and most coaches would write them off, but I see it as, well, they can be very good. You just have to find a
Yeah.
different way to teach the concept that you're trying to teach.
Right.
So, and then if I ever had any free time after that, I do enjoy reading. I do like to read. So that's about it.
That's it. Yeah. And I think we're gonna dive into it later in the episode. And but if there's one thing that I really hope that we hit home today with is your passion. because I remember leaving a few weeks ago your school, and I was texting people and calling people, and I was telling them about you. I didn't tell you this, but I was like, this lady's passionate, and this lady gets the most out of her kids. Like, it's the reality of your kids are in some really tough situations, and we'll talk more about that. But you make sure that they know that they don't have to stay in that situation, and they can go out and be everything. And you're doing that through the CT program, and but most of all, you're passionate at what you're doing. And we were walking to the school, and you're like, yeah, I painted those walls. Yeah, I brought in that couch from home. That's my old TV. Your passion was everywhere, and you put your stamp everywhere on the school that you lead. And to me, that's true servant leadership. It is. And so hopefully all of our listeners can get that today and take something from you in regards to that. So tell us a little bit now, Brittany, about your journey as an educator. Where have you been? Where are you going? All of those things.
Well, let's see. Growing up, I graduated in 2003 from high school. 'Cause, the internet was around, but not for a lot, and definitely not in rural West Virginia. So I really didn't have a good idea of what kind of career fields were even available to someone that had um, a good skill set in math. I knew that I was good at math, and that was about it. Like I knew I was good at math, so I was going to be a math teacher. It's pretty simple, and I knew that I liked to teach people whenever they said they couldn't do it. I liked to like it was a challenge. I wanted to always take on. Like, no, I can get you to do it. I can teach you to do it. So I liked that. I immediately went to college straight out of high school and majored in secondary math education. I was 17 when I entered college, and I went an hour away from home. I didn't go very far, and I stayed very busy at the same time. I think at one point I had 21 credit hours,
That's
two
your MO.
jobs.
Busy.
Yeah, 21 credit hours in math, but two jobs, and I cheered in college as well. So it's just kind of who I am. I don't know how to relax. So
Yeah.
uh, let's see, I graduated there. I graduated from college in 2007 of December because I had my twin boys halfway through. And I had a job in Lincoln County High School, which is my hometown. My high school turned into the consolidated version, which would be Lincoln County High School. And I started about a month after I graduated college. They hired me for like the next semester. Math teachers are kind of hard to come by, I suppose.
Yeah. Still are. Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked there for 13 years. I taught algebra 2, geometry, AP calculus, and college algebra throughout the time. I had 1 year off that I taught in Corpus Christi, Texas, while my husband was in pilot training there.
Yeah.
So,
Very cool. So I just a young mom, twin boys, and here you go, teaching high school math. And so, and what led you into administration?
well, I did not want to be a principal.
Hmm.
Um,
Same way.
I wanted to be a professor at Marshall University, which is the closest university to us, but I wanted to teach aspiring teachers kind of how I could teach math. I felt that I could make it seem simpler, and I wanted to try to help the most that I could. And I thought that would be the way, would be to teach aspiring teachers that want to go teach math. And in order to obtain a doctoral degree to work at a university, you have to have your master's. So I did my master's in administration. I kind of just thought that should it be difficult to find a position at Marshall, which it is,
Hmm.
that I might find a math coach job, within our county.
Yeah.
And, in the meantime, so my master's is in administration. And then my doctoral degree is in curriculum instruction, but it has an emphasis in teaching in rural Appalachia.
That's cool. Very cool. And now you're principaling, and you're doing it really well. And that's very obvious, and stepping foot into your building, but also just having this conversation with you. And so my next question for you, and we kind of wrap up our intro, is who can you say has influenced you in your life?
So personally, I mean, we all have influencers, you know, things, past tasks. but people, and we have positive and negative. But I definitely wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for my parents, both parts of the positive and negative. My sister, she's 7 years older. She had to step in and be a mom most of the time, So, those are probably my core three. But then I had an aunt that lived just down the road, and she stepped in a lot to be a parent as well when needed. And then my children, different, as many adversities as I feel that I have faced or have seen my peers face, then my children have faced different adversities, and then I've been able to experience it from a different point of view, and they definitely change me daily on how I would approach things.
Yeah, that's good. I've had some other parents as guests on the School Life series. Good parents, I would consider you and these other guests. And they've said, like, my kids inspire me, influence me to be a better human, to be a better person, to be a better parent. And Sarah DeLuey, who's now doing some consulting work for School Life, she said, my kids make me better. And you just alluded to that too. Like, I learned from them. And a lot of times we just think our kids are learning from us, right? That's our job as parents. But if we're doing it right, I think we're learning on both sides.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was one thing I always wanted to be the parent. I never wanted to get it mixed up to where I felt like I was the friend.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a purpose and a place for that later on to be their friend. I hope that I will
Mm.
be their friend. And, sometimes when they're in the preteen to teenage years, you are walking the fine line of friend. But I
Hmm.
always wanted to be their parent, but and a realist. I wanted my children to know to always they could come to me first. I trust, they could trust my responses more than their peer that who knows
Yeah,
where they got their info from.
exactly. Especially in today's world. So that's really good. And then we'll jump to my last intro question, and it is, why is being an educator the most important job in the world? And you probably don't remember this, but you said this to me a couple weeks ago that I've got the most important job in the world, the best job in the world. Why is that to you?
It's I can't be the mom to everybody, so it's the second best thing to me that, I'm not only am I teaching them math because that's, was my trade by nature, but I'm teaching them how to behave. I'm teaching them how to think, how to be open, how to accept others, how to take adversity and not let it deflate you completely, but let it humble you enough. And also how to take that adversity or the defeat and use it to nourish grit, which I feel like our kids are lacking
Yeah.
overall, and they can take that and use it, fuel for whatever it is they're trying to achieve. If educators aren't going to teach the whole child, which I know is a hot topic, but I truly believe in it that
Yeah.
parents should, but I mean parents aren't
Yes.
overall. So we can't just say, well, that's not my job.
Right.
Well, it has to be somebody's job, or I just hate to see the status of where we're at in 20 years. So I definitely feel that it's the most important job.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. I mean, it is a hot topic. And what I feel like is what the problem is yes, we're asking our teachers to teach the whole child, but we're still saying you have to teach the rigor, the academics, teach the standardized tests. And so it is hard to do both. And I think we're at a point in our education system where we got to say, look, okay, our kids really need this whole child piece, and so, how do we align all that together? And you're doing it with this CT program that we're about to get into. It really is hitting and developing, our next generation of leaders, our next generation of hard workers, respectful human beings, all of these things. And so, I like that. And I got to say, you didn't brag on yourself, but there is not a teacher in your building that says she forgets what it's like to be a teacher. Why is that?
I still teach.
Yeah, I was blown away when you said that. I was like, wait a minute, you really you teach? Yeah, you teach a class.
Yeah, I taught for the past 2 years. I've taught a math class because we lacked a certified math teacher, but also we're down in our staff to the point that I would have to go from blocking or a double period, however administrators look at that in a schedule, but twice the amount of time in math and English, which we need. I would have to reduce that time to be equal to that of the science, social studies, your electives, that kind of thing, if I didn't pick it up. a class.
Yeah. Again, servant leadership, right? And saying this needs to happen, and I'm very capable of doing this. I'm actually a good math teacher, and I'm going to step in here and see some results from it. So, all right, let's dive into today's topic. So, the topic is what I would say meeting in the middle. We're going to be talking middle school education quite a bit, but our topic really connects with reaching kids where they are. I think you do a great job of that, not just as a principal, but at Guyan Valley, where you lead, your school is doing that with your students. And so when I say that, reaching kids where they are, what immediately just comes to your mind?
First, you have to know where they are. And
That's it.
that is really what a lot of educators struggle with, I think, is that they come to the classroom with their own assumptions of their students, and be it positive or negative. Very rarely is it true, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we try to look at it as how we were raised, but also how we are raising our own kids. You
For
know,
sure.
so if you're an educator and you have children and you're thinking, well, why don't you have a pencil? I know that I bought you a pencil, but
Yeah.
yeah, you bought your kid a pencil.
Yeah.
You know, and your kid knows to bring their pencil, but did this kid learn that? You know, and as far as your background, that is also affected completely. How if whenever you're a kid and you come home with your work and nobody even asked about your backpack, you know, and so when I was growing up, I was self motivated. I had honestly, it was just challenges. I just wanted to meet the challenges. But I know of kids that go home and they're worrying about, I don't know, feeding their little brother, or
Mhm.
taking care of someone, or, you know, even worse things that our kids go through. And so the last thing they're thinking about is practicing the, you know, multiplication
Yeah.
tables that night.
I literally just had that conversation this morning. I was telling you I led a PD session at a local school, and we talked about that. I said, it is so easy for us to get mad, get frustrated with the student that never does their homework, right? Or in the 140th day of school, and you still haven't turned in a single homework assignment. And it's easy just to get mad, you throw the consequence, whatever. But do we ask why? Right? Pull them aside if and say, hey, you have done your homework in 140 days. It might not just be because they're trying to be difficult or they're refusing to work, like you just said. Maybe they're feeding three siblings, getting them ready for bed, doing everything that a parent should be doing because there isn't a parent. Maybe the parents, has drug use in the home. Maybe the parent is working three jobs and this can't be home because they're trying to provide ends meet. Like there's so many things happening in our students' lives that, like you said, if we don't know where they're coming from, then we're not serving them the right way. And so
Right.
you already talked a little about it, but like what are maybe two strategies that you use to meet your students where they are?
Well, I mean, I think a unique thing about middle school that I was pleased to learn that I didn't really anticipate, because I had spent, you know, all of my time in high school or college, because I did teach a couple college courses. But the kids that I could affect the most or make the biggest difference on were the ones that I coached. And the thing was time, right? So I naturally gravitated towards the kids that were like the bad kids or the have nots, or, you know, but in coaching, I'm spending 2, 3 hours a day with these kids. So I could make a difference in their lives. And I've seen a lot of positive changes in that. But the kids that I only had for 45 minutes a day, and they were already 16 and had their minds made up, like, that was really hard to say. I know your life is really difficult. I know that you're struggling with things way outside of algebra 2, but you don't have to always be like this. It's even hard to get to that conversation because you have to know what's going on in their lives, and then they have to trust you. And then that leads
Bingo.
into the second
Yeah.
thing, is that for them to trust you, you have to open up first,
Mm.
right? So in high school, it was more difficult to reach them. And then in middle school, what I found though is that they're very, very not easily influenced still, right? But they're also easily influenced in a positive manner,
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say that goes both ways.
right? Um, I decided that because I graduated with my master's in like 2013, and I didn't start this job until 2021, I think.
Mhm.
So I wanted to do well at it, and it was in a crumble of of just everything, an assortment of
Yeah.
you know. So I knew I had my work cut out for me, which that wasn't going to be the issue. The issue was going to have everyone buy in, and why would I want to come be the principal here? I've only been in high school, and a lot of people knew zero about my background unless they just beside us maybe I don't know. So I knew that I had to talk to them. So on my very first day with my staff, it was a leadership team meeting. I think I'd mentioned it to you. I went ahead and I said stuff there that I had never said to anybody,
Wow.
because the I wanted to be good at everything, and part of that was it didn't matter what I was overcoming in my own life when I was a child or a teenager or even a grown up. If you're good, you can overcome it. So I didn't
Yeah.
want to talk about it or act like it was a problem so people didn't know
Just
anything.
put up this wall, this
Yeah,
shield. Yeah.
but then that backfires because then it looks like you're perfect, so to say, and
Yeah.
you had it easy. So how could anybody relate to you? How would you know what challenges were like or anything? So I opened up to my staff that day, but then from that point forward, I just said I'm going to just lay it all out there to anyone. So I
Yeah.
just talk about things with any child that if they came up to me and they were having an issue and if I could relate in any way, then I would tell my story.
Yeah.
And that really helped give me more information on what was going on because they were like, "Oh, okay." So usually like the first thing I lead with the kids is like, okay, how many know where 4 Mile is? And that's known to be the worst little area. And they're all
Yeah.
like, oh, we do. And I'm like, okay, well, that's where I grew up, 7 miles up 4 Mile in a trailer shack that's still there. And that kind of like immediately you can kind of see the kids like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah.
you have to build a relationship with them by opening up first, which is hard. And then you have to get them to open up, or you have no idea where their middle grounds is.
Yep.
Or
Yeah.
where,
No, I like that. I know you told me that in conversation a few weeks ago. I said something about how do these kids just buy into this? And you said they know that I'm one of them,
Mhm.
right? They know my ACE score.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And that's it. Like, just letting down the walls, being transparent, being honest, being open with both your staff. Because I think the administrators that are listening to this, they know that's one of the most difficult things as an administrator is working with other adults. And if in your first few years, it's getting that buy-in, earning that trust, all of those things. And if you're struggling with that, just like Brittany said, try to open up, be a little bit more transparent, let them know the why. And I think even veteran administrators struggle with that because a lot of times we try to like make all these really tough decisions and be closed off and like shelter our staff from things that are happening. And sometimes we need to let them know the real deal and be transparent. Say, this is what's going on in my personal life. This is what's causing it. This is what's going on in our school. Because, a lot of teachers have no idea what's truly going on in our school. And so sharing what you can share and letting them know, I think is great. And so, what are some of the benefits of what you just talked about?
I feel honestly like they know where I stand all the time. And even if it's different than their point of view, they still know where I stand. There's no guessing. There's no like being afraid to approach me about something because they probably already know kind of roundabout what the answer is going to be. So it does remove a lot of that anxiety when it comes to them asking questions and my students asking questions. And it reminds them that I'm like a parent for them. And I tell them all the time, like, when you're here, I'm your parent. I have
School mom.
custody of you, like I'm responsible for you. And I want to produce children that can survive in society on their own, you know? And so they know that if we'll walk down the hall and I'll be like, hey, Gabe, take your hood off. And they
Hmm.
immediately they know who it was. Like it's not,
Yeah.
oh, she knew my name. Like, yeah, she knows your name and she knows where you're from and where you live and what your score was and that you didn't try very hard and you know, and make it I make purposeful interactions with them as well. I try to utilize some of my strengths, which is like a good memory to when I was looking over the scores. I remembered this one particular student had the highest writing score for 8th grade, and he comes from a very difficult background and had a very difficult year last year. But I knew that it would mean a lot to him that someone pointed that out because he's not known for that.
Hmm.
So I made sure I pointed it out in the hallway around his peers entering class so they would hear it too, you know.
Yeah.
I try to do that a lot to try to build that trust and also that they matter to me.
Yeah. Yeah, they matter. And you do a great job of recognizing all students. Because it's easy to recognize the top, the most athletic, right? All these. But every child deserves to be celebrated for something because every child has something inside them that they can offer to your school, to their classroom, to their community. So pulling that out, and you never know that one thing that you find inside them and pull out and celebrate, and maybe the one thing that they take with them and they realize they're really good at. And all of a sudden, it sparks a career and it sparks a future for them. And so that unintentionally leads us perfectly into this CTE program. And so middle school CTE, again, like I said in the intro, blows my mind. But tell us more about what you're doing at Guyan Valley and how you're doing it. And so I know we don't have a ton of time, but share with us a little intro.
Okay. So, small background. Like I said, we had terrible test scores. I inherited terrible test scores and terrible attendance, terrible parent and guardian
Fight.
involvement. Yes. Yes. I mean, that's a staggering statistic that I promise is completely factual. But in the first 90 days of school, we had 44 physical fights. And
Blows my
children,
mind.
like children, staff members, they were afraid to walk in the hallway sometimes, so that's obviously not going to make any fights not happen if you're afraid, if teachers are afraid to go out in the hallway. So there was a lot to overcome. And I knew like anything, it's going to take time and I'm willing to put in the time, but most people aren't. So I didn't want people to jump ship when it started to get hard and you had some pushback. So I thought I was also, not only was I addressing, you know, 2 or 3 big rocks, so to say, a year, but I was looking at how can I get more students to want to come here? Because even though it's not, it's not a private school by any means where you have to pay. However, if you don't want to go here, your parent can drive you anywhere else.
Yeah.
And we were losing a lot of our kids and they're not good kids. Kids are not good or bad.
Mhm.
Kids are they're
Preach.
great
Yep.
kids, but we were losing our kids who had parents that were involved and were nurturing their kids. And those are the kind of kids that you need in your building because not only do the kid part, not only would it rub off on the other students, seeing them studying, seeing them making good choices or, that kind of thing. The parent part kind of rubs off too. When
Yeah.
other parents see that these parents are more involved or they know more about what's going on than they do, it can be contagious in terms. So I thought,
Yeah.
how can I bring
Yeah,
more
they're role
kids?
models
Right.
for sure.
So how can I bring more kids here, like despite the negatives that's very much out
Hmm.
there? And I thought, well, no one has like a CT program that's not also going to segregate kids because that was the other thing that I'm very much against was the haves and have-nots. And unfortunately, I think high school CT programs. I have 2 kids. Both of them were college-bound kids. Both of them took AP English, but one of them was in CTE because he really liked the Cisco networking and graphic design and stuff.
Hmm.
So it got to a point where he would have to. They told me he had to pick. Do you want to take AP English or do you want to take networking? And I'm like, no, 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 we're not picking. Like, we're doing both.
Yeah.
Because
It needs both.
I'm
Yeah.
already thinking like he could have a job with the networking while going through college. Because he wants to be an author. So anyway, I thought, well, how do you get rid of that? Is everyone has to do it. Like everyone takes it because everyone has a career. And I feel that jobs are no longer more blue collar versus white collar necessarily.
Yeah.
Every career field has your requirements or qualifications. There would be anything from a GED to a doctoral degree. In like every career field, if you look at education, you have bus drivers with a GED. I think actually one of them may have just said you didn't have to have a GED even,
Yeah.
and you have teacher's aides. And then, you have your teachers for bachelor's degrees or associate's degrees for your secretaries. And then you have, your master's and doctoral degrees. Like it goes all the way through. Well, that's the same for every career field.
Yes.
So, I mean, and a lot of times it's not how it used to be where you just go to school forever and then go get a job. Like
And isn't that the truth? Yeah.
you're getting a job, you're raising a family, you're getting married before you ever finished your, I guess, what we looked for is like our bachelor's degree. That was
Yeah.
the hierarchy of it. But so why not teach them how they can get what careers lead up to the career they want? So it's
Hmm.
not useless time spent. So that was a couple of things, but also I wanted kids to be engaged and I wanted them to have ownership of my school and their education. Our attendance, I think it was like 88.9 something. And you can't, in the grand scheme, I can't increase math scores if they're not in my building,
Yes.
right? And then
Yeah.
even if they are, if they hate school and can't see a connection to it, and well, this isn't for me, I'm only here because I have to be, or I'm here to eat, you
Yeah.
know, then I'm never going to increase the scores, which just seems to be the one standard that everybody wants to look at. So I thought, well, let's find something they like. So my seventh grade boys was the roughest category to hit. They hated
Mhm.
school, didn't see the connection, they didn't want to come to school. They were the ones causing most of the problems. And it's because of, where they're at in life and puberty, basically in
Yeah.
seventh
Oh
grade,
yeah.
and I thought, well, if I could have, they think they want to be welders, they want to be carpentry, they want to be roofers. If they do have a male figure in their life that they're similar to those kinds of jobs, but they don't really get any type of training available to them or even idea of what those jobs actually entail and the qualifications for them until they're juniors or seniors in high school. And by that point, they could have messed up pretty bad. They could have already wrote off education completely.
Hmm.
And we failed at that point. We missed the calling point for them. So my program is there are 12 fields right now
Yeah.
for my school, and every kid goes to a CTE class for 40 minutes, the same period length for as all the other classes except for English and math, and they get to pick. So they give me three choices that they like, and I do my best to put them in one of their. And I start with your eighth grade, then seventh, then sixth, and then at the semester, if they want to stay, they can choose to stay. But if they want to go to a different CTE, they can go to a different one. So that's the basics of it. But then the second piece is that my school is a simulated workplace
Yeah.
for my kids. And that's the piece that brought in the real engagement piece. They're hands on, also the ownership piece.
Yeah.
So every CTE class has jobs, and then the kids can apply for the jobs. Everyone has a manager, and the manager can be a sixth grader, seventh grader, eighth grader.
I would say the manager is the student.
Right. And
Yeah.
I talk to the students. I meet with them every week. We have a manager's meeting. And then in the manager's meeting, we discuss, what projects are coming up. We kind of divide them out, or the overarching ones that kind of affect everyone. Say homecoming would affect a lot of them. And then they take that back, and the next day they have to have the same meeting with their group. So it works. It surprisingly has a lot of upsides that I didn't think of initially. Like they're
Hmm.
my student government, which is great because it's not a popularity contest anymore, but it gives
Yeah.
me a good variety of students to bounce things off of, and I have a good idea of what works and what doesn't work, what needs changed or just tweaks a little bit. But our kids, they make things happen. They make
Yeah.
everything in the building work.
And that's what I was really going to make sure that, we understood in this episode was that like your kids run your school. I
Yes.
mean, you're there obviously as the principal and you're running the show, but your kids do it all. I mean, I was blown away as you were giving me a tour. You're like, yeah, you see the screens. Our kids, are up constantly uploading and changing those, and the sports management CTE line the football field and take care of the officials on game night. The one that really got me was your health services or whatever you call it, or your triage nurses during the day. So if the school nurse isn't there, then someone needs a band-aid, they got it, right? They've got it under control. I mean, and so just like example after example as we were walking through your school, like your kids were doing everything. And so stuff, yes, that adults could take care of and could handle. But one, we're burnt out, we got enough on our plate. And two, what are we teaching our kids if we're just doing everything for them? And
Right.
so that was one thing that I really took from that tour was that the kids are running things, and it doesn't matter. So when they choose the CTE and whether they go and pursue that career or not, they learn a lot of life skills, work-related, job-based skills during their years in your CTE program that they're going to take with them wherever they go. They
Yeah.
can change jobs 10 times, change careers 5 times, and they're still going to take what they've learned at your school throughout their life. And
Yeah.
I think that's so important. And going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the episode, that whole child learning,
Hmm.
this is it. I mean, this is doing it. And so not only are they learning these work-based skills, but they're learning how to work with each other,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
just
And
today,
collaborate. And
I received emails that were from two of my students that are in graphic design, and their task that they were assigned with was to create the list of students that had a 4.0 for the second 9 weeks and create the slideshow, so to say, and then they send it to broadcasting, and the broadcasting students then put them on my TVs and on social media. So I had given them the parameters in the managers meeting that was just the first names of the kids and the grade and 4.0. And then I said, whatever it is, just create it and then send it to me. I'll look over it, and then I'll tell you if you can send it on to broadcasting. Because I understand they're 13, right? So I don't want to end up with penis on my TV here. But
yeah,
at the
it'll
same,
happen.
but at the same point, they wouldn't have yet come by that, honestly, because I think they'd be terrified of what would occur. But
Yeah. Consequences.
they know that I'm going to check it, and
Yeah.
I'm not putting that kind of responsibility on another student because they're sending it to another student in broadcasting that's going to put on the TVs. But I had two different ones waiting on me, and they figured out on Canva on their own, like how to ask for, like, you can put for review, and then I comment on it, and I wrote back real quick, yes, looks great. Make sure you capitalize the first name, like, or the first letter of the name. And I really like the design because I'm not trying to micromanage it. People know kids did it, right? It's
Yeah. And they should.
right. Like, that's great. So I don't care what kind of design you got going on. I just want to make sure everything's appropriate. And
Mhm.
also that we are teaching professionalism in terms of what they can achieve. They can absolutely spell things correctly and, you know, correct punctuation.
Yeah.
So I sent it back. Well, then it was lunch, and I'm sitting there in the game room doing lunch duty. And the little boy goes, "Hey, Dr. Porter, did you see my slideshow?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did. I saw that. I love that." I was like, "I wrote back. I told you, just make sure you capitalize the the first letter of their name." And he said, "Oh yeah, I was going to. I was just seeing if you approve the design." And I was like, "Yes, it looks great. Looks great." But just something simple like that. I had said, you have to send it to broadcasting. I said, Malia's the one that's has that job to put those on the TVs. And he said, yeah, and I'm going to send it to Autumn because she's in education and they're having to make the same bulletin board. So I already have the work. And that
Wow.
was like a connection that they had made on their own, because our education CTE, they do our bulletin boards and everything.
Yeah.
So he saw that they were working on the bulletin board on 4.0. So he was like, I'm going to send it to Autumn because I already have it done.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Like another example, their education CTE takes care of the bulletin boards for the teachers. All the teacher just has to do is put in the form, tell them what they want, and the kids take care of the work. I mean, what teacher's not going to love that? And so just constant, examples. You have welding, drones. And so I know our listeners are going to be like me and say, I want to know more. How do you do this? And so we're going to share here in a minute how they can contact you. You can always contact me. I'll get you in touch with Brittany. But grants, right? Because that was one thing that I asked him, like, wow, how do you buy all this? Like, this is awesome. I mean, your building itself is over 100 years old. It was pretty obvious that you didn't have money falling from the trees there in
Yeah.
West Virginia, where you're located at, and you shared that part of your story. And I was like, how are you buying this stuff? And so you wrote a lot of grants, and I'm sure you'd be shocked about what people want to do. Companies want to support this type of work, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, and the grants were easier to write than I anticipated. I'd never wrote one prior to. But even if it wasn't a grant, if you're a Title One school, you could use funds for that because it is instructional. All of it's instructional. You could use instructional funds for it. Your students will learn more doing hands-on engagement in leadership and connecting the whys of we run a store, and my business management group, they they keep up with the inventory, and they have
Yeah.
an actual spreadsheet, an actual ledger, and that's hands-on for math that you can't really replicate in a classroom because they don't see the connections. Too abstract for middle schoolers. I mean, I believe it's probably too abstract for most kids nowadays with technology, you know. But so you can use different funds for that. But also, I mean, I go off Facebook Marketplace a lot, honestly.
Yeah, that's what
I
you
mean,
said. Yeah.
I'm not trying to encourage any teacher to use their own out of pocket funds. That's not what I'm saying. But you'll be surprised at one of the pool tables. It was on Facebook Marketplace, and sorry, we have a pool table in the game room where kids have
Yeah.
a reset, But it was on Facebook Marketplace, and it was like $200 or something because it's a little bit smaller than a billiards. And I was like, great, would you take any less? I'm going to put it in my middle school for our indoor recess. And they're like, oh, you can have it. Just have somebody come pick it up.
Yeah.
So
That's
I was
it. And just
like,
say,
oh,
hey, yeah. A lot of times it says, hey, I'm a principal, I'm a teacher, that's what I'm using it for. And people want to help. They just don't know how to help.
mm-hmm.
And you see that a lot. And so I know we would. We've gone way over time, and that's okay. This was a great episode, great conversation. So as we wrap up, I always like to ask a couple of questions, and one that is, what advice do you give to any educator?
Don't make assumptions,
Mm,
be it with your
good.
kid, with your administrators, your fellow teachers. I know that, we're all guilty of, oh, they've missed 5 days this month. And, you know, I struggled with that before I came to this realization I had to share about me. Like I didn't want to, but one of my twins, they were born 3 months early, but he's had 15 surgeries. So while I was teaching, I was missing a lot because we were traveling 3.5 hours away to see his doctors and to have surgery. But I felt like I was on an island and that no one really cared because they weren't asking. But
Yeah.
like I didn't tell anyone either, so I was assuming that they didn't care, but they were assuming I was missing for who knows why. So
Yeah.
that's just a little thing because your friendship in your staff is a big reason of why you love or don't love going to work every day.
Yes. That's good. And you don't have to be best friends to have a friendship. All right. To be there for one another and support each other. That's great. I love that. And then what advice do you give to all your students, school mom and Dr. Porter?
Well, same thing I give my own kids every day. Don't be too arrogant to ask for help in anything, and don't let anyone else's opinion dictate your own opinion about yourself.
It's good. It's great. Your kids, I'm sure, if I will walk through the halls and ask any of them, they would know that. They would share that. And so thank you again, Brittany, for sharing your story with us, opening up, telling us more about your CTE program, but then also just how, we can connect with students on a real level that is not going to, build trust, respect, and ultimately going to bring more success to our classrooms and our schools. And that's what we want. So share, I know, like I said, I'm sure people will be curious about your CT program. You can always reach out to me, but you mind sharing how they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, sure. My email is beporter@k12.wv.us. And I am in the process of creating a way to market it for purchase other than just right now. I mean, I have the whole curriculum and lesson plans and everything, but it's not electronically as easy to access. But I'm in the process of it. But if you have questions, or I'd be happy to get back with anybody to give them advice or anything.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. I appreciate the conversation, appreciate the friendship, and all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in, listening. If you want to be a guest or you have somebody that you think would be a great guest on School Life Series, let me know, reach out. But as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for liking, sharing, and the positive feedback that you continue to share with me. And until next time, continue to be great.